Imagine a time of deep pain and oppression. The Hebrew people lived as slaves in Egypt. They were forced to work hard, day and night, building cities, carrying stones, making bricks. And even though they suffered so much, the people grew, and this began to bother Pharaoh. The king of Egypt was afraid. What if these people become stronger than us? He thought. So in a cruel act, Pharaoh made a terrible decree. Every Hebrew boy born was to be thrown into the Nile River. Only the girls were allowed to live. In this dark scenario, a Hebrew baby boy from the tribe of Levi was born. A beautiful, healthy boy. His parents, Amram and Jochebed, could not obey Pharaoh's order when they saw him. They knew that God had something special for that child, and so they decided to hide him. For 3 months, Jochebed hid the baby in her house. Imagine the risk. Any loud cry could attract the Egyptians, but there came a time when it was no longer possible to hide it. And that was when she made a courageous and at the same time faith-filled decision. She took a basket made of reeds, coated it with bitumen and pitch like a little boat, and placed her son inside. She took the basket to the Nile River and set him down among the reeds near the bank. It was as if she were saying, "Lord, now he is in your hands." The baby's sister, Miriam, stood at a distance, watching to see what would happen. And then something amazing happened. Pharaoh's daughter, the princess of Egypt, went down to the river to bathe. She saw the basket, sent a servant to get it, and when she opened it, she saw the baby crying. She was moved. Even though she knew it was a Hebrew boy, she said, "This will be my son." At that moment, Miriam, with boldness and wisdom, approached and asked, "Do you want me to call a Hebrew woman to breastfeed the baby for you?" And the princess replied, "Yes, go." Miriam ran and brought the boy's own mother. Jochebed returned home with her son in her arms, now protected by the princess's order. She even received a salary to take care of him. And when the boy grew up, he was taken to the palace and began to be raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. The name she gave him, Moses, which means taken from the waters. And so begins the journey of a man who would change the history of an entire nation. After being saved from the waters and adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, Moses began to live inside the most powerful palace on earth at that time, the palace of Egypt. Now think about it. That Hebrew baby who should have been thrown into the Nile was growing up as a prince. He had access to the best of everything: education, food, fine clothing, security, and all of Egyptian culture. He was trained in the arts of war, politics, and Egyptian religion. He was respected. He grew up hearing titles of nobility, seeing the gods of Egypt being worshipped and being treated as one of the sons of royalty. But inside him, there was something different. Despite being raised as an Egyptian, Moses knew who he was. His true identity, his Hebrew origin, had not been erased. Deep down, he knew that he did not belong in that culture of oppression, idolatry, and vanity. He had learned, as a child in his mother's arms, about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this inner conflict grew over time. The Bible doesn't tell us many details about Moses' adolescence, but we know that he lived for 40 years. As a member of the Egyptian court, on the outside a prince, on the inside a Hebrew, a man torn between the luxury of Egypt and the suffering of his people, until the moment came when the calling that God had placed within him began to pulse stronger. And what was just restlessness would turn into action, an action that would change the course of his life forever. One day, when Moses was about 40 years old, he left the palace and decided to observe the suffering of his people. He went to where the Hebrews were working as slaves, and there, before his eyes, he saw something that awakened a deep revolt within him, an Egyptian brutally attacking a Hebrew. It was more than Moses could bear. That pain, that injustice, that oppression, it was as if everything he had kept, bottled up for years, finally exploded inside him. Moses looked around, saw that no one was around, and attacked the Egyptian. He killed him, and to hide what he had done, buried the body in the sand. In his mind, perhaps it was an act of justice, a first step towards freeing his people. But the next day, everything changed. When Moses returned to observe the Hebrews, again, he saw two men of his own people fighting among themselves. He tried to separate them and correct the aggressor, saying, "Why are you beating your fellow Hebrew?" But the answer was a shock. "Who appointed you as judge or prince over us? Are you going to kill me too, as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" The truth had gotten out. Someone had seen it, and when Pharaoh heard of the murder, he ordered Moses killed. Now this powerful prince, who had everything, became a fugitive. Alone, dishonored, rejected by both Egypt and his own people, Moses fled into the wilderness. He walked for miles and miles until he reached the land of Midian, a simple place far from palaces and wars. A place where God would begin to work in his heart in a profound way. There, near a well, he helps some shepherd girls, daughters of a priest named Jethro, and is invited to stay in their house. Moses accepts, and he doesn't just find shelter, he finds a new life. Jethro gives him his daughter Zipporah as a wife, and Moses goes to work as a shepherd. A man who once commanded soldiers now tends flocks. A prince walking in palaces now walks on the stones of the desert. And so, for 40 years, Moses lives in anonymity, far from Egypt. Until one day, on an ordinary morning, God surprises him with a supernatural call. The sun was already beginning to rise over the Midian desert. Moses, now 80 years old, walked among the mountains and arid pastures, tending the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro. What seemed like just another ordinary day in the desert was about to become the day that would change his life forever. While guiding the sheep through Mount Horeb, also known as Mount of God, Moses spotted something strange in the distance. It was a bush on fire, but there was something different about that fire. The bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. No leaf burned, no branch turned to ash. Curious, Moses approached to take a closer look. It was then that from the middle of that flame a powerful voice called his name. "Moses! Moses!" Frightened, he replied, "Here I am." Then the voice ordered, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." There, God spoke to Moses, not through dreams nor visions, but directly. He introduced himself. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard this, he covered his face, afraid to look at God. And the Lord continued, "I have seen the affliction of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. I know their pain, and I have come down to deliver them. And now, Moses, I am sending you." Yes, God was calling Moses to free the Hebrew people from slavery. It was the beginning of a divine mission, much greater than anything he could have imagined. But Moses, insecure, asks, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the people out of Egypt?" And God responds with firmness and tenderness, "I will be with you." Even so, Moses remains full of doubts. But what if they ask, "Who sent me?" And God declares one of the most powerful sentences in Scripture, "I am who I am. Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, the I am has sent me to you." God also reveals that he would do wonders, that he would harden Pharaoh's heart, but that in the end the people would be freed. Moses still hesitates. He says that he is heavy-tongued and that he doesn't know how to speak well. Then God promises, "Your brother Aaron will be your mouth, and you will be like God to him." And so, after much resistance and fear, Moses accepts the call. He comes down from that mountain no longer as a shepherd of sheep, but as the man chosen by God to face an empire and liberate a nation. Before leaving, he returns to his father-in-law Jethro's house and asks permission to return to Egypt. Jethro blesses him, and Moses, along with his wife Zipporah and his sons, sets out for the most challenging confrontation of his life. While on the way, God reaffirms his plan. "You will perform signs before Pharaoh. I will harden his heart, but in the end, he will let my people go." Arriving in Egypt, Moses meets his brother Aaron, as God had promised. They embrace, share what the Lord has told them, and go to the elders of Israel. Moses performs the signs. He turns his staff into a serpent, and the leprous hand is healed. And the people believe. They prostrate themselves and worship God, filled with hope. But then comes the first test by fire. Moses and Aaron stand before Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world at the time, and boldly say, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh, with a cold face and a hardened heart, looks at them and responds with contempt. "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." And as if that were not enough, Pharaoh reacts with cruelty. He increases the burden on the Hebrews even more. Before, they received straw to make bricks. Now they would have to collect the straw themselves, but continue producing the same amount. The people suffer even more. And instead of being grateful to Moses, they complain to him, saying that everything has gotten worse. Moses then returns to God, distressed, and asks, "Lord, why have you done evil to these people? Why did you send me?" But God does not remain silent. He responds firmly and with promise. "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand he will let them go. I am the Lord." It was just the beginning. Egypt would yet see the power of God poured out in judgments such as the world had never seen. And Moses was at the center of that plan. God had warned. Pharaoh's heart would be hardened, and that is exactly what happened. When the king refused to free the Hebrews, God began to pour out a series of supernatural judgments on Egypt with the aim of showing who the Lord really is. Each plague was not just a punishment, but a direct attack on the gods and the arrogance of Egypt. Moses, accompanied by Aaron, was God's spokesman in each of them. 1. Water into blood. Moses touched the waters of the Nile with his staff, and the entire river turned to blood. The fish died, the water became foul, and no one could drink it. Egypt, which depended on the Nile, was shocked, but Pharaoh hardened his heart. 2. Frogs. Everywhere swarms of frogs came out of the river and invaded houses, beds, pots, everything. Egypt turned into chaos. Pharaoh asked Moses to pray, and when the frogs died, the smell was unbearable. But the king backed down. 3. Lice. Moses struck the dust of the earth, and it turned into lice on men and animals. Even the magicians of Egypt said, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh did not give in. 4. Swarms of flies, disgusting flies, infested the homes of the Egyptians, except in the region of Goshen, where the Hebrews lived. God made it clear, "My people are set apart." Still, Pharaoh resisted. 5. Plague in animals. A deadly disease killed the Egyptians' livestock, cattle, camels, sheep, while the Hebrews' animals remained alive. And yet, Pharaoh's heart grew harder. 6. Ulcers and wounds. Moses threw ash into the air, and it turned into painful sores on the Egyptian skin. Even the magicians could no longer stand before Moses, but Pharaoh still refused. 7. Stone. Rain with fire. God sent a storm on Egypt that was unprecedented. Hail mixed with fire. It destroyed crops, killed animals, and destroyed everything in the open air. It was as if heaven were at war with earth. And Pharaoh, for a moment, asked for forgiveness, but as soon as the storm stopped, he changed his mind. 8. Grasshoppers. Ravenous. Locusts covered the whole land and devoured everything that was left after the hail. Nothing turned green. It was as if hunger was at the door. Pharaoh almost gave in, but hardened again. 9. Thick darkness, a supernatural darkness, covered Egypt. For 3 whole days, no one could see anything, no one left their homes. But in the Hebrews' homes there was light. A silence of fear hung over Egypt. But Pharaoh continued to defy God. And then God announced the last plague, the most painful of all. 10. The death of the firstborn God warned that at midnight all the firstborn in Egypt would die, from Pharaoh's son to the lowest servant. But God gave the Hebrew people a special instruction to sacrifice a lamb without blemish and smear the blood on their doorposts. Death would pass over the houses marked with the blood. That's why that night became known as Passover. And so it happened. That night, a cry of pain echoed throughout Egypt. Parents cried for their children. Not even Pharaoh's house was spared. And it was only then, at the height of his pain, that he surrendered. Take your people. Go away. Serve the Lord as you asked. After 430 years of slavery, the people of Israel left Egypt free. With gold, silver, and a living promise in their hearts, God was with them. The people of Israel left Egypt in the middle of the night, in a hurry, but free. More than 600,000 men, not counting women and children, carrying their belongings, animals, and the spoils of the Egyptians, gold, silver, clothes, all as God had promised. They marched through the desert with one goal, the promised land. And at their head was God himself, in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, to guide and protect them. But back in the palace, Pharaoh's heart hardened again. He realized that he had lost all his strength, his pride, his power. So he gathered his army, chariots, horsemen, and soldiers, and set out in pursuit. When the Hebrews saw the Egyptians approaching, they were terrified. They were camped on the shore of the Red Sea, with water in front of them and the enemy army behind them. Many began to grumble against Moses. Was it to die here in the desert that you took us out of Egypt? It would have been better for us to have remained as slaves. But Moses, filled with the presence of God, responded with a courage that set hearts on fire. Do not be afraid, stand firm. Today you will see the salvation of the Lord. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. And then God spoke. Why do you cry out to me, Moses? Tell the people to march. Moses lifted his staff and stretched out his hand over the sea, and a strong wind blew all night long. The waters parted into two great walls, and a dry path opened up in the middle of the Red Sea. The people crossed on dry ground. Thousands and thousands of men, women, and children passed between the walls of water in silence, in awe, before the glory of God. The Egyptian army tried to follow, but then God confused the chariots, locked the wheels, and when the last Hebrew stepped across the shore, God commanded Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." Moses obeyed. The waters came rushing back and swallowed up all the Egyptians, horsemen, chariots, soldiers. Not one escaped. On the other side, in safety, the people of Israel saw the bodies of the Egyptians floating on the beach. And there, that day, the people feared the Lord and trusted in God and in Moses, his servant. And then Moses and the people sang a song of victory. The Lord is a warrior. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? It was a celebration unlike any other. They were no longer slaves. They were the chosen people, set free by the mighty arm of the living God. After crossing the Red Sea, the people of Israel set out on their journey toward the Promised Land. But this would not be an easy or short journey. The wilderness would test their faith, hearts, and obedience. It was there that God would begin to shape not just a free people, but a holy nation. In the first few days of their journey, they run out of water. In the desert of Shur, they find a place called Marah, where there is water, but it is bitter and undrinkable. The people complain, and Moses cries out to God. Then the Lord shows Moses a piece of wood. He throws it into the water, and the water becomes sweet. There, God begins to teach something profound. If you listen to my voice and keep my commands, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians. I am the Lord who heals you. But the journey continues, and hunger comes. In the desert of Sim, the people begin to murmur again. It would have been better for us to die in Egypt, where we ate bread and meat. Here we will die of hunger. Once again, God shows his patience and his supernatural care. He tells Moses, I will rain bread from heaven for you. The people will go out and gather their daily allowance, then I will test them, and so it happens. Early in the morning a layer of dew covered the ground. When the dew evaporated, a fine, white, flaky substance appeared. The people looked and asked, "Manna?" Hebrew, what is it? Moses answered, "It is the bread that the Lord gives them to eat." Each person should only collect what they needed for the day. If anyone kept more, it would rot and grow worms. But on Friday, they had to collect double the amount because on Saturday the food didn't fall and no one had to work. It was the beginning of a daily relationship of dependence. Every day, the people had to trust that God would send food from heaven, and he never failed. In addition to the manna, God also sent quail in the evening, small birds that would land on the camp, and so they had meat to eat. Day after day, miracle after miracle, the Lord sustained his people in the middle of nowhere. Even when they complained, even when they doubted, God fed them. There, in the silence of the desert, he taught them to trust. After weeks in the desert, the people of Israel arrive at Mount Sinai, a special place where God would reveal himself in a powerful way. Moses climbs to the top of the mountain to meet God. The atmosphere is one of mystery and reverence. The mountain is covered by thick clouds, with thunder, lightning, and a trumpet sound that makes the whole earth tremble. The people are left down there scared, because they had never seen anything like it. God speaks to Moses and gives him a set of laws, the 10 Commandments, which are the basis of the moral and spiritual life of the people of Israel, and which still impact the world today. The commandments are simple but profound, guiding how to live in peace with God and with others. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make images to worship. You shall not take the name of the Lord in vain. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. Thou shalt not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's things. While Moses remains on the mountaintop, the people wait below, anxious and sometimes impatient. They know that God is there, but they cannot see him directly because he is too holy. Imagine a people who had lived for hundreds of years as slaves in Egypt. They were the Israelites, men, women, and children who worked day and night, carrying stones and making bricks without rest, without freedom. Their bodies were tired, and their hearts were full of sadness. But God, who is loving and just, saw their suffering. He chose a man named Moses to free his people from this terrible prison. After many trials, miracles, and with God's powerful help, Moses managed to lead the people out of Egypt, miraculously crossing the Red Sea and leading them into a vast desert, where there was no easy food or clean water, but there was hope, the hope of a new life, of a promised land where they could be free. Now these people needed to learn to be different, to be special, a people who would reflect God's justice and love for the whole world. To do this, God called Moses to climb a high mountain called Mount Sinai. Imagine that mountain, immense, with peaks that almost touched the sky, covered in clouds and shrouded in a mysterious mist. Moses climbed alone, climbing for many days, and at the top he had a very special encounter with God. God spoke to him, giving him not just words but a real gift, the tablets of the law, 2 heavy stones on which God wrote with his own finger the 10 Commandments. These rules were not simple orders, but the heart of what God wanted for the people: to love God, respect their parents, not to lie, not to steal, not to kill, and to live in peace and justice. While Moses was down on the mountain, the people began to grow restless. They missed their leader, and fear began to grow in their hearts. Will Moses come back? Has God forgotten about us? They thought. Fear can make people make bad decisions, and that's what happened. They asked Aaron, Moses' brother, to make a god for them to see and worship. Aaron, driven by fear and pressure from the people, took all the gold they had, necklaces, earrings, jewelry, and melted it down. With this melted gold, he made a golden calf, shiny and flashy. When the people saw the calf, they began to celebrate. They sang, danced, and offered sacrifices as if the calf were the God who had freed them. This was exactly what God had forbidden. God wanted them to love and obey him, not to worship images made by human hands. High up on Mount Sinai, Moses heard the noise of that strange and forbidden party. His heart broke. He quickly went down, and when he arrived, he saw that scene that made him very sad and angry. He held the tablets with God's commandments, and in a mixture of pain and anger, he broke them on the ground. Those pieces represented the broken pact, the destroyed trust. Moses confronted the people firmly. He burned the golden calf, turned it into powder, and made the people drink the mixture, a sign that sin had consequences and that they needed to understand the gravity of it. But Moses did not give up on the people. He prayed to God a lot, asking for forgiveness and asking God not to destroy Israel because they were the chosen people, a special people for God. God listened to Moses and in his mercy spared the people, but punishment was not avoided. Many of those who participated in the feast with the calf died. This made it clear to everyone that true freedom is not to do whatever you want, but to live in love and obedience to God. After this sad episode, God showed the people that he wanted to be present always in a special way. He gave Moses instructions to build a sacred place, the tabernacle, a portable tent where God would live among the people. This tabernacle was no ordinary tent. It was made of special fabrics, gold, silver, fine wood, all very detailed and beautiful. There was a part called the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest could enter, and there the presence of God appeared in the form of a bright and luminous cloud. The people were very happy to contribute. Each person gave a little of what they had, gold, fabrics, furs, wood, so that the house would be perfect. Very skilled craftsmen worked for months to assemble everything exactly as God had commanded. When the tabernacle was placed in the center of the camp, a bright cloud descended and covered it. It was the glory of God, a clear sign that he was there, always close, protecting and guiding the people in all their steps. During the 40 years that the people spent in the desert, Moses was much more than a leader. He was a loving guide, a man who listened to God, who prayed for the people, who taught them to live in a way that pleased God. Even when the people complained, were afraid, fought, or wanted to give up, Moses did not stop talking to God. He did not command harshly, but with patience and love. He taught the laws that would bring order, peace, and justice to the people. After many years of guiding the people of Israel through the desert, facing challenges, helping, teaching, and trusting in God, a very important moment arrived in Moses' life, the time to say goodbye. God told Moses that he could not enter the promised land, the wonderful place God had prepared for his people. But God allowed Moses to see this land from afar so that he could experience the joy of all that was to come. Imagine a high mountain where the wind blows and the clouds pass quickly. Moses climbed this mountain, and from there, with his eyes wide open, he looked at the valley and the mountains, at shining rivers, green fields, trees laden with fruit, and cities full of life. When Moses was about to die, he climbed a mountain and could look out over the promised land from afar, a beautiful place full of rivers, trees, fruits, and peace that God had prepared for his people. But Moses did not go in there. He trusted that the next generations, those who learned to trust and obey, would enter and live in that blessed land. He saw that beautiful place that would be the new home for his people, who would be free and happy, thanks to God and his journey. Moses knew his work was done. He had done everything God asked, freeing the people, teaching them the laws, caring for each person, even when they complained or were tired. Moses was a faithful leader, and God loved him very much. After this, Moses came down from the mountain, but his body remained there on top, where he rested forever. The Bible says that no one knows exactly where Moses was buried. It was a secret from God. Even though Moses did not enter the promised land, he left a huge legacy. He showed that With courage and faith, we can face the greatest challenges. He taught the people that true freedom is to follow God's ways, with love and respect. And the people of Israel continued their journey, following the laws that Moses taught, walking towards that wonderful land that God promised. The story of Moses teaches us that God is faithful, that he never abandons those who trust in him, that even in difficult times he is with us, guiding us, protecting us, and giving us the strength to move forward. Moses was an ordinary man, but chosen for an extraordinary mission. He showed that with faith, courage, and love, we can face any challenge. Thank you for following along. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment so that YouTube brings more incredible stories like this one. And of course, I will continue to bring many more for you. Until next time.